Welcome to Talk to Me. I'm here today with my very special guest, Miss Herdyne Mercier. Herdyne's life calling is to create non-judgmental spaces for broken
Mhm.
hearts to heal so purposeful living can be restored. She believes that happiness and sadness exist in a delicate balance. Herdyne is committed to redefining how we as a society understand grief. She defines grief as a natural human reaction to any loss or change in normalcy. Through her teachings, Herdyne encourages individuals to understand that life is not perfect but must be lived. Herdyne strongly believes the goal is to not allow our unhappiness to overtake the good times. As the founder of Redefining Grief, Herdyne has built a community of individuals committed to living their best life, anchored down in purposeful living despite what life throws at them. Herdyne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brenda, for having me. I'm so excited. We have been talking about this for a while, and we really have just met on Clubhouse and been connected ever since. So I thank you so much for honoring me with allowing me to talk about my life purpose. And it's really talking about grief, what it is. And I can't wait for us to have this amazing dialogue today.
And you know, Herdyne, I thought, how amazing. This has been set up for months. But for you to come today after what happened, the horrific tragedy in Colorado, where someone
Mhm.
just walked
Mhm.
into a grocery store and indiscriminately began to shoot people. And also last week, when unfortunately someone went into a three different business establishments and just started shooting people. And now the Asian community is coming under attack left and right. We've had numerous attacks on black men that are walking targets, in my opinion, in our society. And just the tragedies of losing Kobe Bryant and all those people over a year ago, the collective amount of grief that has been going on seems to be never ending. And so I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to you talking about your anchoring program that you have and any other things you want to share with us today on how we can manage grief because the struggle is real.
Mhm. It's real. But I gotta tell you, it's normal. What
Mm.
is not normal is that individuals are not taught what to do during the grief process. Grief is this normal and natural reaction to any loss. So when we talk about grief, we're talking of just not the death of someone. I think oftentimes individuals believe that we can only talk about grief when we're talking about the death of someone. But we're talking about the death of a relationship, divorce, relationships, being in a relationship where individual was your best friend for 25 years and then life happens and it's no longer. There's grief behind that. We're talking about the loss of health. When you think about getting that cancer call, getting that diabetes call, getting that call that your health is not what it used to be, that's grief. Job loss, especially in this COVID area that we're in, we've been in over a year now. We're grieving the loss of our normalcy, our schedule. We're grieving the fact that our kids are home for those who still have their kids home. Like that whole routine of sending your kids to school, picking them up, seeing them, and now imagine that whole routine is gone. So you're grieving your old schedule, maybe, and then there's pet loss. That oftentimes today is what, International Pet Day, Puppy Day. We were
Puppy
talking about it.
Day,
Yeah,
yes.
and there's pet loss. And oftentimes when you lose a pet, you really don't have a safe place to go to describe that pet because individuals usually shun you as far as that pet not human, but that pet provided you a sense of comfort. They listened to you, they loved you unconditionally. So it is my life mission to really educate people, even moving.
Yes.
Thinking about grief to me is just saying, and this is why we're redefining grief. That's what my podcast is about, redefining grief and understanding finances, all of these things that have our heart break
Mm-hmm.
is things that we need to learn to deal with. And it's normal, but what is not normal is nobody is teaching us what to do when our heart breaks, especially if we go back to our childhood. Oftentimes, if you begin to cry, depending on the home that you were raised in, you were asked question, what you crying for? Go to your
Mm-hmm.
room to cry. So very young, at a very young age, we have found a way to silence the emotions that come with heartbreak, which is very saddening. And so now my whole mission is really teaching parents of teaching their kids, instead of saying why you're crying, ask this powerful question: what does the tears represent?
That's good. Herdyne, before we go into all these different areas of grief, because honestly, as you're speaking, and I always love how I learn things as my guests come on board, because I honestly had not thought about the grief that accompany. I'm currently going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also dealing with chronic pain, the grief of I re-injured my back, so the grief of not being able to move the way I normally had. I had not even considered that grief.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way things are. But
Mm-hmm.
before we go there, can you tell me what caused you to choose this particular mission?
Oh, this is a yummy story that I love to share. It really came out of this being this child or kid that was very curious about funerals. Like I was that 7-year-old child. If someone had died in the church or family member and my parents were talking about it, I was around the corner like, what time? I need to get ready. I need to have on my black and white outfit. I found the photo the other day. I'm going to share on my social media.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would get ready. And literally, if my parents did not take me to this funeral,
Mm-hmm.
I was a hot mess in tears. So they just learned, just take her to the funeral. She comes back. She might be a little scared. She may ask to sleep with them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, this is just something. So I was known from my friends, my childhood friends, as Herdyne is going to a funeral this weekend. That's why she can't hang out with us. And so it was that curiosity of, why do people die?
Mm-hmm.
I would always ask. And by the time I got into my teens, I was like, you know what, God, I'm not gonna die. I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to live forever. And my way of living forever is showing up emotionally well.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about wealth, I think emotional well-being
Mm-hmm.
and showing up emotionally well and solid to teach the next generation that when grief happens, when the heartbreak happens, in the midst of it all, you still have purpose. In the midst of it all, God is going to hold you accountable and ask you, what did you do with the time that I gave you? And so, with that being said, it really started off as a child, very curious about funerals. I thought I was going to be a mortician. And
Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, I just really had a heart in a space for
Mm-hmm.
creating safe spaces for individuals whose hearts are broken without judgment. And then I say, let's get the work done so that we can heal and get back to purpose. I have a whole program that goes from grief to purpose. What do you do when your heart breaks? What do you need to do to get back to the purposeful living that is required of all of us?
Now, prior to you actually walking out this purpose that it seems that you developed even as a child, you kind of didn't go down this path originally, did you?
No, no, I
And
didn't.
could you tell a little bit about that? And then we're going to swing back into why you're here.
Okay. Um, it started off with me going into school to become a teacher. And then I really realized, well, I really like helping individuals. Let me not get my education degree. I was halfway almost done, my senior year in college. And I said, well, let me switch over to social work because I feel with social work, there's so many hats that you can wear. as
Mhm.
a social worker. You can do hospice, you can do medical, you can do school social work. There's just so many hats that you can wear as a social worker. And I don't like to be put in a box.
Okay.
So it sounded like, and I love the idea of being to advocate for the vulnerable. And I love just that type of work. And so I went into social work, but I really did not hone in on this gift until I was in a season of my own grief, when I
Mhm.
was thinking about my career and my life. And I'm like, okay, I'm married, happily married to the love of my life, Dr. Jameson Mercier.
Mhm.
I have amazing kids, but I just wasn't at a place where the purpose, where I didn't get it. Like, I'm like, I got all these degrees, the master's degree. Now what?
Mhm.
What is it that you require of me, Jesus? Come on, help me out. Because if I'm never going to die, I need to unwrap the gift.
Yes.
I need to unwrap the gifts that are within me. And to make a long story short, I I was in a I will never forget the day. My favorite word is wisdom. And I said, okay, God, help me out. I need a coaching. I need outside of formal education. I got all the formal education. I need coaching. And I remember hiring Patrice Washington and really diving into the 6 pillars that she teach. And
Mhm.
those pillars changed my life. That coaching program, Purpose the Platform, has changed my life. My mastery and momentum has
Mhm.
changed my life. And I really do owe the whole switch of what happened. I got licensed in that season. I did a presentation for her on grief. And she was like, I know you're working on wifidence, but
Mhm.
grief is your jam. And that's what coaches do. They help guide you. And I'm
Mhm.
like, grief. I just remember her encourage having this courage Molino having this, and I'm like, grief. That is too easy. That cannot be my purpose.
Yeah.
In my mind, I really did believe that purpose is this hard work. You got to grind for it. You have to
Mhm.
spend countless hours, that I really overlooked my greed. I mean, overlooked my gift of
Mhm.
really working with individuals who are grieving, because I thought everyone else had this gift. I really did believe that.
No, everyone
And
does not have this gift because, as someone that has dealt with multiple traumas and several incidents, now that you kind of spelled it out, that
Mhm.
were considered incidents that I possibly have not really grieved through,
Mm,
I can tell you the people around me and the people I know are not equipped to handle that level of grief.
mm,
And so having someone that is clear on grief, what it is, and how to handle it would have been invaluable for me as I've traversed the past, specifically this past year. So let's
mm.
talk about your grief, not grief handling process. Is that the proper term? Grief handling process?
Or are you talking about the method in which I created to help people process grief?
Yes.
Yes, the grief
Thank you.
anchors.
The
No
grief anchors,
problem.
that's it.
And so, in my own despair, because my grief was really, this purpose grief was serious to me.
Hmm.
Like, it put me in a deep depression, because I'm like, come on, Jesus. You're not going to let me live and not unwrap my gifts. It was really, I mean, I really do have a solid foundation as far as family, friends, but that career piece of me was, I was in a tug of war with that, an emotionally tug of war, and I just remember going through this process, and I remember saying, these are the steps that got me to emotional well-being. And the very first process that I teach my clients, that I talk about on speaking engagements, on the podcast or interview, is truth. It's that truth anchor. I really do believe when we tell the truth about our heartaches, It liberates the soul. You
Mm.
feel lighter. You feel available to tackle whatever emotion that you are going through. But the issue is, people do not have safe spaces that are non-judgmental for them to heal. So they can't get to restoration if they can't find a safe place to tell the truth. That's why I offer this availability in my services of, hey, I'm that accountability person that you can share whatever, the abortion, getting an STD from your spouse, but you still want to be married, but you're still grieving the fact
Mhm.
that he cheated on you. Like
Mhm.
these dark things that you don't want to tell no one else, but you want a safe space that will not judge you and actually help you work through the process of liberating your soul by telling the truth. The second anchor that I talk about is that heart anchor. What is really going on in the heart that you are not able to get to a place of restoration? It burdens your heart. This thing has broken your heart to the core. And just like we talked about, it could be the divorce, the loss of a job, pet loss, moving, whatever that heartbreak is. Let's really examine your heart so
Mhm.
that we can do the soul work of healing it and doing the restoration. And then the third anchor that I teach is that connection anchor. There is power in community. When you have community that is non-judgmental, you
Mhm.
soar a lot faster in life because you know who you're anchored in and you're solid. And I think a perfect example of that is my wisdom circle. I have a powerful wisdom circle of women outside of my husband that literally anchors me and check me when I need to be checked. Herdyne needs to be checked in life. Remind me that when imposter syndrome show up, who I am and who
Yeah.
God says I am, right? And
Mhm.
these are the individuals that they're my cheerleaders. They kick me out of the bird nest when I need to be kicked out the bird nest.
Yeah.
Um, and there I have my P2P sisters, my purpose to platform sisters that are literally individuals that really help me stay anchored and focused on my life assignment. So we all need community. um, and I think even COVID has shown you
Yes.
that
Co-
community
Community
is
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 everything.
is everything.
It's everything. If it was not for this platform, I would not even be doing what I'm doing now, because the community of people that have helped me. When I was diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder, I sat home for 8 years. So now, through
Mhm.
the power of Zoom, Facebook, StreamYard, and things of that nature, I'm able to build a community that I previously would not have been exposed to. And where you have the wisdom circle, I have a personal board of directors
Ah,
those are my people that I go to, that, like you, that is my wisdom base. There are mighty women of God that keep me straight when I'm feeling the imposter syndrome or feeling like I can't make it. Like today is Tell Yourself Tuesday, and
mhm.
that's the day that I tell myself those things that I need to hear, that maybe sometimes I don't want to hear, but also
Mm.
that will motivate me and affirm that I'm on the right track for walking out my purpose.
Oh, I
Okay.
love that. I love
So
that.
that's important. Go ahead, continue with your steps, because this is fascinating to
And
me.
then the fourth step is that faith anchor, trust without reservation. I think what people do not realize, there when we grieve, there's this intangible, you can't get to it. It's that faith. A
Mhm.
lot of us start questioning God.
Mhm.
Why us? Why me? Why don't you hear me, Father? I prayed for you not to take my mom and she's gone.
Ooh, don't go there. Mm.
She's 6 feet under. So you gonna tell me you didn't hear my prayers, but you heard the prayers of someone else? What's going on here?
Or
Right?
my prayers, I prayed for somebody else's mama that is still on this planet, up walking around with them, and mine is buried.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And so we have this struggle with our faith when we're going through grief. And I say in that season, that is the time you need to anchor down in your faith and really have these heart to heart conversations with your creator. Keep it real with him. He knows your mind anyway. He knows what you're thinking. And I have found that telling those hard truths, because oftentimes when you go to spiritual directors with these questions, or individuals in your communities with these questions, you are typically shunned with the idea of, how dare you question God? You know, and why would you act such a thing? Don't you not believe in God? And all of these questions that are shaming, but they're just saying, I just want to be able to ask him, and I know that he'll communicate with me that response. And so the very first thing, and I always say, trust without reservation that the answers will be given to you. So ask the hard questions to your creator, because he always send an angel to respond. And I'll tell you this quick story. I remember going into Publix in the midst of my despair and just asking God some questions. You know, I'm by myself. And I will never forget, this elderly Black woman stops me. And she touched, this is pre-COVID, and she holds my hand in Publix. And she says to me, and I'm going to try to make it through without crying. She says to me, you are going to be okay. God got you. And she proceeds to say, I am the first of breaking records in Broward County. And at this time, I don't even remember what records that she broke. And she began to speak to me. And when I tell you, these are the questions that I was asking God.
Yeah.
Like, my husband didn't even know I was asking my questions. My best friends, my wisdom sister. So I knew in that moment, I had just met an angel on earth. And she just touched my hands and she said, God's got you. And she hugs me and she leaves. Like, I've never seen this woman again in my life. She told me the records that she went to break. I went to search up her name in Google. I could not find her. And so when I tell you, anchor in your faith, anchor in her faith. And I have to say this, I am the queen of shedding tears. I'm open, and I strongly believe you should shed your tears. But I really want to make it through this interview without Boohoo crying.
Well, I'm going to give you a break to do that while I tell you, so you can gather your thoughts. Because when you said that, it made me think about, for years, I was mad at God because I was wallowing in my grief about the death of my mother. Because when my mother was in the ICU, there was a lady right next door to her, and she was a mother of a co-worker. And they called me and they said, Miss Brenda, I know you're a woman of God. Come pray for my mother. Well, I prayed for her mother and I prayed for my mother. My mother passed and their mother lived. And then following Sunday, I was sitting in church while I watched them walk in with their mother. And I was mad. And I was mad at God. How you going to let her get up? And she was worse off than my mom. And my mom is dead. And for years, I had an attitude with God. I stopped reading my Bible. I stopped praying. I wouldn't even talk to God. How dare he? And then Minister Tony Evans' wife passed. And his son got up and gave the eulogy.
Woo! You taking me back.
Did you see that one?
That.
Yes. And the part that messed me up, because, you know, we don't have time to go, but if anybody out there, if you want to get an answer about life and death and about the goodness and the mercy of God, watch the funeral of Mrs. Evans. Because when that man said either she was going to be healed or she was going to be healed, either she was going to be delivered or she's going to be delivered. Either she's going to be set free or she's going to be set free, or she's going to be a family or she's going to be a family. All I could do was cry. Because, see, I had never looked at it that way. I'm a Christian, but I was a Christian with an attitude. And that one video on YouTube of that man eulogizing his mother changed. How dare God say, that's my child. You know, and I was angry. I had not worked through my grief. And that was the first time I really had a cry about my mother passing. And with full knowledge that she was in a better place, that mama was okay. It was me with my head up my rear end about all that happened. And now I was able to process the grief. And although her physical body was here, and that was when I finally remember what my mother told me. She said on her deathbed, literally before she closed out, she said, "Baby, don't live in my death. Celebrate my life."
Ooh.
And then I was able to do that. Ever since that time, for the first time, I had been able to celebrate my mother's life and not live in her death. So I do understand the importance of getting clear on what it means to me in that respect. But now, since then, and I tell you, had I not seen that this past year with COVID, with 15 people in my circle passing, I would not have been able to bear the weight of the grief that came with that. But every time someone passed, I heard my mother say, "Celebrate their life, don't live in their death." And I heard that eulogy. So I knew that they were going to be okay. So I was anchored in my faith that although they're absent from me physically, in spirit, I know they're still going on.
Yeah. And I think that was my teenage mind of, I'm never going to die. I am going to do whatever it takes to live the life that God wants for me. And that means doing the emotional work of tapping in with a therapist, examining my childhood, going through the things. So as I evolve as a woman, I am constantly shedding old beliefs. I am constantly reprogramming myself for better every day. The every day. And the reason I keep at it is because I got 6 little eyes looking at me. And these are my children. Because they don't do what we say, they do what they see.
They do what they see.
And so I want them to see, baby, you got one shot of living. And so what are you going to do with the life that God has given you? And so Azriel, Tamara, and Jason, they are my main assignment. And they are the reason I show up for life.
That's good that you show up for life.
I show up for life because they're looking at me what it means to live. I want them to understand operating in purpose is what is going to get you wealth. And wealth is emotional well-being. Once you get emotional well-being, everything else comes into place. The finances. And I think society teaches us to chase money, not emotional well-being. And that's why we have a lot of celebrities who reach the career-wise, but emotionally they're not at a place where they can thrive. And the sad truth is some of them choose to die by suicide. And so that says to me that emotional well-being is where it's at.
Okay, tell us that 5th step.
That 5th step is restoration. That is the place where everybody wants to be. Emotional well-being is saying, I arrive at a place of restoration. But I want you to know that even though you have arrived at a place of restoration, you have to understand you will be triggered. And the triggering is okay because now you are empowered. You are empowered griever because you know the truth about grief. You know the holidays will trigger you. You know possibly going to someone else's mother's funeral might trigger you and bring up some memories. But because you know what to do, you're an educated griever at this point, you will know what to do, what mental health tasks that needs to be done to get you back on the purpose. Everything is about getting you back to purpose. Because I think oftentimes when we are shattered with life's ups and downs, we tend to crawl in our bed and want to give up. And so I say, no, you fight to live. You fight to live. You fight to do whatever needs to be done to surrender. I think oftentimes people think the fight is doing the work. No, the fight is saying, Father, this is out of my control. I know I need to tell the truth about my heartache. I know I need to examine my heart. I know I need to connect with the right individuals. I know I need to anchor in my faith. That is going to get me to restoration. But I also know that restoration also means I'm putting up my hands to surrender.
That this has been so amazing, Herdyne, and I'm like, our time is running out, and I want to ask though, there may be someone that cannot get to a grief counselor like yourself. What is one thing you would tell someone that right now is just drowned by the grief? What can you suggest for them to do if they cannot get to you? And we're going to get to ask you the question of how people can get to you.
Okay. I think the truth of the matter is, I always say use your five senses to heal yourself. What are you listening to? If you can't get to me, I have a podcast with free resources of individuals who have gone from grief to purpose.
Okay.
I have people that features death, divorce, job loss, went from, I had the empire builder himself, Gerald Washington, was on the podcast. He went from having millions to losing it all and getting it back in that whole grief process. I had Kara on my podcast who went from saying my grief was divorcing a good man.
And what is your podcast called?
The Redefining Grief podcast with Herdyne Mercier.
And how will they find that podcast? Is it on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Hulu, Netflix? Where's that?
It is on Spotify, iTunes. We're getting it on Audible soon. It is literally on all the platforms. And if you cannot find it, where I really love to play is Instagram at Herdyne Mercier. DM me and I will help you find the podcast. On my website, www.herdynemercier.com, I have a free resource book that you can grab right now to make you an informed griever.
Okay, now we got all the free resources. Now for those people that say, you know what, Herdyne, I went to your free resources, but I am still covered in a mountain of grief and I think I need to work with you. How do they reach out to you for that?
Oh, you would go to my website, herdynemercier.com, and schedule a consultation. And if you can't find it on my website, I know it's there. An easier place to go is Instagram, DM me, and then we'll connect and I'll help you get scheduled for your free consultation.
And those of you that may have already noticed, below our pictures in the Zoom link there is the website so that you can reach out and connect with Herdyne. Herdyne, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. I could talk to you for hours because the first time we were supposed to talk for a few minutes, and I think we did talk for hours. It's like a sister-girl connection, and I love that about you. You were just so open and so generous and so willing to help me with my own pain. I have one final question for you.
Yes.
How does what you do currently help you live your best life?
It allows me to show up with integrity. It allows me to show up in truth. It allows me to live my life on a whole nother level. I think when you tap into purpose, you're not afraid to die. You're afraid that you might not live. And for me, I know what it's like to have a body, have working arms and legs, and still ask God, can you please take me out? Because this isn't working. Like, this is just too much emotional pain. But then to hear him, to have him say, no, you still got an assignment. Let's do this. And so I say to get up every day and help myself first. I think in the helping profession, you always want to speak about others. But I tell you, the reason I am able to wake up every morning with a smile on my face, even if there's ups and downs of life, is because I show up for myself first. I put myself on the calendar and I have made a commitment, signed contract with my creator that I am going to unwrap all my gifts and make sure by the time he calls me home, I have unwrapped everything and I'm going 6 feet under empty.
Look at that. Well, we're going to be watching Herdyne and listening to Herdyne on her podcast. And as she stated, you can find her at www.HerdyneMercier.com and get to become, and how did you say it? An informed griever?
Informed griever by
An
redefining.
informed griever by
Yes,
redefining grief. Thank you, Herdyne, for being on this show.
it's my honor.
At this time, I'd like to take this opportunity to say, hey, everyone, thank a veteran. Remember, go to www.nevcc.org/projects and take this opportunity to tell a veteran thank you. There is someone standing on the wall somewhere in a foreign country or even in the United States while we get to sleep peacefully at night. And in this current situation of unrest, we need to take the time to remind our veterans that we appreciate them standing on the walls in our behalf. Again, go to www.nevcc.org/projects and thank a veteran. There are 12 different themes, one for each month of the year, where you can put in your thank you to a veteran. At the end of the year, we will compile all those thank yous, put them into a book, and on January 1st, 2022, some very lucky veterans will get a gift basket containing lots of goodies and a book with all your thank yous. So please thank a veteran. Herdyne, once again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my honor.